You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Mike Ramirez, welcome to the podcast, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for making the drive out here. I know you had a little bit of drive and it's chilly outside, so I really do appreciate you making it out. You are a professional, I guess your professional industry currently is executive and personal protection, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So these are folks, CEOs, business people. They travel the world and sometimes need personal protection, right?
That's
so
correct.
That's what you guys handle. It's similar to what you did when you used to work for Blackwater, correct?
That's correct.
How many years were you with Blackwater?
I worked for Blackwater from end of 04, beginning of 05 to it officially quit being Blackwater as you know it in I think the fall, September maybe of 2009, if I'm not mistaken. At that point, the original founder, Eric Prince, former Navy SEAL, sold what was known as Blackwater to a investment group, and then it changed name several times. So I worked with them until it was no longer Blackwater, and then moved on to other government agencies as a contractor, still doing government work.
Was personal protection, contracted personal protection, was that the first time you saw it, or just that was the most popular was with Blackwater? Because it had to have existed at some point, but I don't know if they used the military to escort people or when it was like ambassadors or whatever they needed to do. But has that always existed, or is it a new thing?
It's a great question, and to answer it, yes, private military contracting, PMCs, private military contractors have been a part of wars for many years. It didn't start with the Iraq War. I couldn't tell you exactly what wars it started, but they've always been around. They serve a purpose, just like you train your militaries to go out and do certain tasks, and through the different wars. There's always been private military contractors who come in. You pay them to do a certain job. They go in, they go out, and you're done with them. So there's many different reasons why private military contractors have been of value to the countries that they serve. One is because they're usually already trained in some set of skill that is needed during that war or whatever controversy is going on. Two, yes, they're known for making, PMCs make all this money compared to our active duty military. Well, at some point they were active duty military. That's why they have these set of skills now and want to be brought back with the understanding we're going to pay you and compensate you very well for the set of skills you have that we're in need of to go do a certain task or job. But once that job or that task or that mission is complete, thank you for your services. You go home, take the money you made, and they don't have to pay you a pension. They don't have to pay you a retirement. They don't have to pay you medical benefits and stuff. So it's a two-edged sword, and it serves a purpose on both sides, whether you're on the hiring side or the being hired side to do things of that nature that fall under private military contracting.
When you do things in that capacity, whether it's for the federal government as a contractor to the federal government or being hired by a private person, let's say you're going, I don't know, you've got somebody that needs to go to Haiti or needs to go to South Africa or anywhere.
Yes.
I guess there's, in my mind, there's got to be some sort of, and I guess for lack of a better term, like rules of engagement, and what is the liability for that? Because ultimately, you want to get in safely, you want everything to be fine. You take your person to whatever they need to go to, whether it's a meeting or an event. You load them in the car, you take them to the airport, and you get out, and everything went fine. But if something doesn't go fine, how does that get sorted out? If you have to use a firearm or be aggressive in some other manner to be able to get your client out safely, right. What is that interaction like?
It's a great question as well, and there's no one answer to that question. So many things come into play first thing the first division is this work being done for the government, or is this being done on a private family side or civilian side? That's going to be the first big determination of what assets you're going to have, what liabilities you're going to have, what governments, if it's on the government side, who's running that operation. Will there be diplomatic immunity for the work you're doing, or what specific agency or department of defense are you going to fall under and answer to? Where on the civilian side, you don't have that. Each state has their own rules of who can carry a weapon, who can't, to do this type of work of protection and security work. So you have a bunch of more red tape that you have to deal with doing this work on the civilian and the corporate side, where on the government side, all that's handled above you and handed down to you to do the operational side. You don't really have to worry about the rules of engagement that you have to follow. They're set, where on the civilian side, they vary from state to state. They vary from country to country. You just because you say you're an executive and personal protection person with 30 years of training like myself doesn't mean I automatically get to fly around this world carrying whatever gun I want and walk around protecting the person that I'm protecting. It does not work that way. You have to follow the rules in every country you go to. So you have to have a network of professionals around the world to make sure that you can meet the client's expectation and need and follow the rules and regulations in every state here within the United States to any country that you may be traveling in and out of. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of proper pre-planning, knowing the areas you're going to be traveling to, doing advanced work, assessments. Everything starts off with doing assessments and advanced work of these locations, whether it's working for the government or where it's doing on the corporate side, to where you're going to go. Know the locations, know the threat levels, know what attacks have been in that area in recent times, what the feel of the people are there, depending on who you're protecting and taking to that area. A lot of times your clients may be going to give a speech, whether it's on the government side or the private side, or promoting something. And, is it going to be a public event or is it a private event? All those things have to be taken into consideration to put a good security plan, an executive protection or personal protection plan, and be successful at it. You don't just get a call and someone say, hey, I need a team to go with me and we're traveling from point A to point B, be ready to go. It doesn't work that way, or it doesn't work. Your outcomes are going to be a lot less likely if you think that you can just pick up and go on a moment's notice like that. So yes, there is a ton of factors that go into it. And to go back to your previous question, yes, private military contracting has been around for a long time, both professionally and then as what a lot of folks, for lack of a better word, know it as mercenary work, where they're not necessarily working for their own country. They go, guys, gals, they decide they're going to go do whatever protection and security consulting for other countries. But in itself, private military contracting has been around for a very long time, and it's very beneficial in the right places, in the right situations. Whether it's on the government side, working hand in hand with our former military personnel of all branches and government levels, government agencies, to doing it in the corporate world, whether it's for a private family, private office, or a corporation who wants that type of protection for their CEO and board of directors, senior director type people. They all serve a good purpose, and a lot of it is similar, but then a lot of it is a lot different as well, from the government side to the corporate side, and not all individuals can make that change. Some are good at doing it in the government environment, but struggle on polishing up things that need to be polished up to do it on the corporate side.
Yeah, I guess you got to be a little more accommodating.
Very much so.
On the private side, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's men that I've met who have only done it on the corporate side and look good, got that good curb appeal.
Yeah.
But when it comes
I saw some of your pictures. You got some pretty good curb appeal, man.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. You know, like I said, for lack of a better word, have a good curb appeal, played the part, look good. But I've trained with some of them, and when it comes to their operational experience and knowing how to truly do protection correctly and protect the client to the level it needs to be done, or their shooting skills are not where they need to be. Mm-hmm. So it's a small group of people in the big picture who can do it on both sides, both the government and the corporate world, and know how to scale it up, ramp it up when it needs to be, know how to tone it down when it needs to be, know how to give that good or not cell service, but a good customer service on the corporate side. And like I tell people, and when I'm talking to young men who are wanting advice and just picking my brain and wanting to know the good things, I'm like, hey, on the corporate world, customer service is equally important to the security, so long as it doesn't compromise the security of the client and of the work we're trying to do, the protection work. Where on the government side, there ain't so much customer service. You can be a little more direct and rigid, whether it's a diplomat or whomever you're protecting, because of the environment of, hey, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to do it, this is the road we're going to travel, and keep your head down.
I'd imagine, like on the government side, there's somebody who's interfacing with, let's say you're in another country. There's somebody interfacing between the job that you guys are going to perform and I guess who's ever in charge in that country.
Yes.
Is there something similar on the private side, on the corporate side, where, because I would imagine if I'm taking you somewhere and we're going to be in a hostile environment, but you've got to go there. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody to know I'm bringing you, right? We want to get in super quiet and get out super quiet. But do you still, for lack of a better term, have to check in with somebody in that other country to let them know, hey, we're going to be doing operations here. We're coming in, or not, maybe not operations, but we're coming in, we're bringing somebody, and this is what we're doing. So when you see, 10 black SUVs driving through your town, it's us, and this is what we're doing. Do you have to do that?
On the government side, it depends on the mission. Depends on what government entity you're working for and what the mission is, on if you're going to go in what we call a high profile status, where you've got, like you just named, 2, 3, 4 blacked out Suburbans, maybe a Humvee in front and a Humvee in back with a guy standing in a gun turret. There's no doubt somebody important is in that motorcade, and they're going to push their way through wherever. Probably have a couple little birds overhead, providing air support. That is one way of conducting business. There's another manner that we call low profile status, and then there's a third one that some of us like to refer to as the shadow status. And in a low profile status, you run a smaller team of men to do the protection. You try to blend in with the public instead of, sirens going off and, cars getting bumped out of the way of the path of a high profile movement. In a low profile movement, you're dressing down to the environment you're in. You're using vehicles that are more of the nature.
Maybe seen locally?
Yes, locally. And you roll with the flow of traffic. You're not, like I said, bumping cars off the road. You're not jumping the curb and running the roads against traffic to not be in a stacked up situation, sitting still, because sitting still is never a good thing when you're in combat zone and in that kind of environment. Bad things can happen if you sit there too long and somebody identifies you as someone they want to take out. That's what we call low profile status. It takes a little longer. It takes sharper, more skilled guys because there's less of you should something go wrong. You're dressing down, like I said. And then we have what we call shadow. It's not used so much in the government side. It's used more, or in my experience, I've used it more on the corporate and civilian side, where someone, for whatever reason, they need the protection. We've done our workup on this person. There is a known threat, but like most people, the biggest fear when they get assigned or themselves want protection for whatever has happened in their lives, the first thing they feel is that they're going to lose their sense of privacy. I mean, you hire these folks, whoever they are, to come in your life to keep you safe, but now every time you look over your shoulder, there's this stranger. Even once you get to know a person and you know them well,
they're taking selfies or
well,
shaking hands.
That's a no-no. But more so of losing that intimacy, that privacy that they can have between a husband and a wife, just having a conversation over breakfast, or the parents with the kids. If a kid is,
they want to feel like normal.
Yes, and they feel they lose that. And so in shadow protection, you allow them to give them a little more space to have that bit of security, but yet freedom to speak freely among the family. It goes as far as you don't drive them; they drive themselves. But in order to accommodate in a shadow protection status, it takes many more people, because you have to know everywhere they're going to go. You have to know the routes they're going to take, so that we can pre-plan and pre-position men to follow, driving behind them. When they go so many miles, they break off, the next person catches up, so that someone with tradecraft like us isn't able to pick off, hey, that guy's following him, that must be their protection. Same if they're going to stop at a restaurant to eat. We already have folks pre-seated, handing off. We're just handing them off. The only time you break cover is if they give you a signal that's been set up that they feel they're in danger, or we spot something as the team that we need to break cover, grab them, and get them out of the area. So
logistically, that sounds very impressive.
It is. It takes a lot of work, and especially when you're trying to do all this without anybody knowing you're doing all this. Yeah. So it takes very well experienced men and women to be able to pull that off the way it's designed to be run.
Who determines? I mean, like you said, in the corporate side, you want to have your public relations with them, and you want to be able to do things to accommodate them, but ultimately security's priority.
Yes.
So who determines, hey, this is, out of the three options, this is the one we're going to go with because this is the one that the other two seem too dangerous. So right. Who ultimately has that say? And have y'all ever been in a position where you had to turn down a client because they said, hey, I want to do things this way, but once you kind of guys assess everything and you determine that's because it's life and death at the end of the day.
Exactly. There's no do-over. There's no let's reset. And that's the thing. And so to answer your question, it starts off with educating whomever your client's going to be, whether it's a government client or a civilian client, a corporate client, of getting them to understand what personal protection really means. Most people think when they hear of personal protection, they relate bodyguard, you're a bodyguard. Well, for lack of a better word, yes, that it could be described as that. But their image is of a man in a suit wearing a little earpiece that's got a little piggly tail, and there's no doubt that person is protecting the person he's standing next to. Yes, that is a way that goes in line with high profile protection, where you're not trying to hide anything. It's an open. You know that this person is protected.
Looks very Secret Service. It sounds
very much so. It does. That used to be a majority of the way private security and executive protection used to be done years ago. We've learned with with time and situations that it's better to dress to the environment, not stand out and draw more attention than needed. It's just better. So you don't see that as much unless the environment rates that. If you're with your client at the Oscars, at the Emmys, or somewhere, some 5-star place, well, then of course, yes, you're going to be in a suit and tie and of that level. But if it doesn't cause for that, and you're just going into a restaurant or McDonald's because your client wants a coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're in sweats and you're in a suit, well, you're going to stand out. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. So that answers that part. Who determines? At the end of the day, it's the entity, if it's in the government or it's the corporation or the private family, whoever's stroking that check gets a lot of buy-in on how they want things. If you, as your company or your team, doesn't agree with that and you think it's going to put the client in danger or your team in danger, you have to be honest with yourself, be professional, and be honest with yourself and everyone else of, hey, this is why we think we need to travel this way and in this situation. And if the client refuses to agree with it, you have to make a decision. Okay, am I going to let the client dictate it and we're just going to roll even though I know better by the intel that I've got, by the advanced work we've done? Or, hey, I don't think we're the folks for you. I appreciate you reaching out to us, but we're going to have to pass on providing the protection because it goes against whatever things you saw that just caused alarms to go off in your security plan, and you couldn't get the client or whoever answers for them to buy off on this is the way we do it. But that's again why I say you got to go back to the first things first. You have to educate whomever you're going to protect on the reason that you're doing the things you're doing and why it's not good to take the same street every day to and from, setting patterns, because someone who wants to cause them harm, who has a little bit of tradecraft, will be able in a week's time or less figure out your pattern of life and find the most vulnerable parts along the route, whether it's on the road, whether it's at leaving the house or at the drop-off point, wherever you're going, the office, school, your favorite coffee shop, and make their plan on how they're going to do whatever bad deed their intent is to you, whether it's to take your life or steal, kidnap and ransom your kids. So you have to educate them that everything you're doing and all the decisions you're making are in their best interest. And get them to buy in. Things work a lot smoother when you can get buy-in from the person you're protecting and their family, and that they understand why, not just because it's security and security says so. No, take the time to explain to the kids, to the wife, to the husband of why it's best. Quiz them maybe sometimes when you get to that point, if you ever do, in the relationship where you can ask them, hey, we just passed this intersection. What was the name of that street? Little things like that. Or, ask the kids, hey, can you, that car that's behind us using your side mirror, can you tell me the plate number? Challenge them.
That's good because you're teaching them
how to be hard targets and to be aware of their situation. Yes. And that helps tremendously. When you end up having a client that isn't about security, they feel they're losing their privacy, but it's being put on them either by, the owners of the company who are like, hey, you're the CEO. We know you don't like security, but because of our stance on such and such, and you are going to travel now with security. I don't care if you like it. You don't get to wave them off.
I didn't even think about that. It can be just an opinion that you have on something that's unpopular.
Yes, very much so. Wow. And they don't want us there, or they try to lose you. I won't work for somebody like that too long. It's hard enough to do this job and be willing to take a bullet for someone and protect them when they have buy-in. If they're not going to follow your suggestions, they're not going to do what you ask them, and they're going to try to intentionally lose you, whether they walk into a restaurant in one door and leave out another. Why? If you don't value your life, why should I?
Yeah. And I guess that comes back to making them understand why we do things.
Very much so. You got to educate them. It will make your life as a protection person a lot easier if you can get them to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how it best benefits them.
Let me ask you this: when you talked about like maybe going to the Emmys or something of that nature, do most organizations that do this type of work, does everybody kind of play along well? Because I hadn't even thought about, you're bringing somebody else is coming with their own personal security detail, and you've got 100 movie stars who have their own security, and it's like, is there a process where you're in the business, I'm in the business, and we look at each other and we understand what we're doing and we stay out of each other's way? Or is there communication that happens between the different entities that go, hey, we're bringing the guy, we're showing up around this time, we're gonna stay for half of it and we're out of there, so we need to be parked in these areas? Because I'm sure traffic's a nightmare. There's all kinds of things.
All that goes into your advance work and doing the work prior to, days or weeks, and then a follow-up right before, the actual day of the meeting. And you see and deal with this on both sides, government side and corporate side. And you're right. Yes, you got to find out who all is going to be at this meeting, who all has their own protection teams. And if you have a good working relationship, those guys, you've been in the business a while, you can probably pick up the phone and be like, hey, dude, y'all are going to be at the same meeting we're at. Hey, and share what you can without compromising, any information, especially anything that's classified. But what you can talk about, times of arrival, when you're going to get there, whatever. Or you do a face-to-face with those other team members, like, hey, this is what we got. What do you got? And share intelligence. Same on the civilian side. You go to these big things, whether it's like awards or like the inauguration that just happened. There was many, I should say many, but there was several big names that were there to be part of the inauguration, to witness it, who were civilians who have their own, personal protection teams. So yes, you kind of figure it out, each other, and you're all jockeying to get to your client to the same place. So you'll figure it out real quick. And for the most part, people are in this business of mine, are very professional and courtesy. But yes, you'll find, like in any business, and where you'll have one that
we talked about ego earlier. So there's got to be a few.
For sure, that their ego gets in their way and they think their client's more important than yours. And well, no, come on, we're all here. We were all supposed to be here. Now let's work together to accomplish what we want, and at the same time not lose focus of why we're here. Because whether a bullet is fired off for your client, my client, or the guest speaker, we're all going to have to work together and to get things accomplished and make sure that whomever we're there to protect gets out of there safely and without injury.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So initially, when I reached out to you, let me back up a little bit. I kind of talked to you the other day on the phone, and I talked about how amazingly paranoid I am about everything.
Yes.
I told you how my wife loves to have a good time and go to places, and and I don't want to say she's oblivious to things, but when she goes somewhere, she prioritizes the good time. When I go somewhere, I do not have fun.
Yeah.
I'm constantly watching people. I'm constantly watching interactions between people, maybe how to get out, where we want to be. There's times where I kind of feel trapped, and so we need to move, kind of thing. So it's weird because, and it seems to be, it's not every case, but usually my female friends are the same way, right? They're having a good time.
Sure.
And all my male friends are looking around, watching the doors and the corners, and So I guess part of me sometimes feels like, am I being over paranoid? Or should I be that paranoid?
Yeah.
And then we had that I guess that car that ran into people in New Orleans, right?
Yes.
So, and again, maybe I'm crazy, Mike. I don't know. But, I feel like there was this conversation that was always had where you always heard the phrase, hey, we fight them over there so we don't have to fight them here.
Oh, yes.
And I don't feel like that's the case anymore. At least I feel as though that can change. And whether it's with the way the border had been wide open for the last 4 years, or whether people that live here become slowly radicalized because we spend so much time telling our population how terrible the country is.
Right.
And some people bought into that.
Yeah.
And I just feel, and then we get into this weird place where I feel like the last, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, the lack of respect for each other has deteriorated. And there's still plenty of it. You still see plenty of it. But there's still a handful of people that go, screw it. I'm going to do what I want when I want. I feel like there's been a time here, especially with this last administration, where people would do things, even during Trump's administration, people would commit crimes, or they would burn things, or they would do all kinds of things, hurt other people. And it's almost like punishment was either non-existent or it was very light.
Yes.
So I think that fear of, hey, I might get in trouble for doing something diminished as well. So it's almost like this pot of, and there's still plenty of good people. And I'm not going to say there isn't, because there's still plenty of them. Right. But I feel like the atmosphere's changed, and you see things happening like, the car that drove into the people, and that's happened before here in this country. You had the bombings at the Boston Marathon. You have things that happen. And I'm constantly telling my wife, hey, wear tennis. She wears these cheap friggin' flip-flops, man. And I'm like, at least wear tennis shoes. And we fought, and it's like, wear tennis shoes. So why? So you can at least run.
Yes.
And so when I go someplace, I go, okay, am I taking a gun? Typically I try to.
Yeah.
Am I going somewhere or legally I really can't and I could get in trouble if I don't?
Right.
So then it comes down to, well, then either I go and don't take a gun or I don't go.
Right.
So there's all these things that play into it, and I just feel like I don't know, man. I watch other podcasts. I hate reading suckers, I say, but I watch podcasts, and you hear about the atmosphere that's going on. You've got a lot of people that have come from other countries that for nefarious reasons, or that potentially could do something to the population here.
Yes.
What is your opinion on that? One, am I crazy? Two, I guess I kind of want to get into a little bit with the things that you've seen, in particular that you've seen in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I don't think that our population fathoms things, because I don't. And I try to think of every scenario.
Sure.
But I still come across situations where I'm like, I didn't even think about that. Why would I couldn't imagine somebody doing that.
Right.
But yet it happens.
Yes.
So I guess, one, am I crazy? Two, what are things that people can do? You kind of touched on it a little bit, being aware of your atmosphere,
And I'll touch on it a little more, but yes.
You're going, husband and wife are going on vacation with their kids. That's a good game to play with their kids. And it's situation awareness and knowing your surroundings. I think adults need to do that more often as well. But I guess at the end of the day, I would like to know, again, one, I'm like crazy, but what can we do when we're out in public with our families to put ourselves in the best situation where if something were to happen, and I don't want people to live like me, I don't want people to freak out. Let me tell you something, Mike. The other day, I'm going to give you an example. The other day, I was picking up some paint stuff for a friend of mine, and I saw this god-awful Escalade. It was like an aqua blue in a handicap parking spot, right?
Yeah. It wasn't factory paint, I'm sure.
No, it was not. and so I'm kind of staring at it because I don't see any placards. And, I told you earlier about Dad having difficulty getting around. So that always upsets me when people park in a handicap. So I was just kind of staring and didn't see anybody in there. So I end up going to stop to get some stuff. And I see the truck leave the little mini mall. Hits a light, takes a left. So I'm leaving 20 minutes later, and I'm at the light, and I see him coming behind me really slow. And there's nobody behind me. So I'm sitting there, and I put my gun next to me, take it out of my bag, put it next to me. And 'cause in my mind, I'm like, maybe he saw me mean mugging him and he's coming back around.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and the guy's creeping up next to me. His bumper gets right by my rear bumper. And as soon as he does that, I put the truck in reverse. Because in my mind, I'm throwing that son of a bitch in reverse if he tries something, and I'll be behind him and I've got my gun.
Yeah.
So I put the truck in reverse and I'm waiting for him to get next to me, and he's going so slow. And he gets next to me and I look over at him and he's just staring straight. He gets to the light, hangs left, and leaves again. And I don't want people to be like me, Mike, but I don't feel comfortable. And maybe
Sure.
it's because of things that I've read or listened to, because I don't read.
Right.
But and just things, I guess, information that I digest. I feel like I don't know everything. I don't know what people are capable of, but I know enough to know that it's a dangerous world.
Very much so.
And I don't want to be uncomfortable everywhere I go, but I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I'd like to give people some info. I'd like for people to have something to digest, but I don't want them to be freaked out either.
Sure.
Or maybe they should be freaked out.
Your concerns are valid. One, I'll start off, you're not crazy.
Okay, thank you.
Two, we should do things to make ourselves less vulnerable that are in our control. So many things around us are out of our control, right? So the little things that are in our control, we need to act on them to make ourselves harder targets. So we're not found, we don't become victims of circumstance or targeted, whatever they may be. And it starts off with just the little things, and we mentioned it a little earlier, of self-awareness. In this world we're living in today of high tech, we're always running behind. I'm more important than you. Fast-paced life. Mm-hmm. We have our heads in our phones, walking to and from our cars, no matter where we're at. We're too busy fiddling with things all around us, and we don't pay attention to the bigger picture. We're so focused right here in front of us when we need to be aware of, hey, is there somebody sitting in a car next to me? Is that car running when I got into my car? To, like you said, that vehicle that I just saw at the gas station. I've left 3 miles away, closer to my house, and that vehicle is still following me, but yet I don't know that vehicle from the neighborhood. All these little things can be indicators of something bad going on. You need to at least be aware of it. And if it's nothing, it's nothing. No harm, no foul. But if it was something, start looking at the type of vehicle, a license plate, a description of the person. Hell, ain't nobody going nowhere without a phone. Our brains tend to shut down a little bit when the adrenaline gets going and we're nervous. Take a picture of it. Picture's worth 1,000 words, man. Yeah. You can always go back, and if it's nothing, you just delete it. But we all need to make a conscious effort to be more aware of our surroundings so that we're less likely to be targeted by someone who wants to do us harm. We all need to work on that every day, from just, staggering the times we, leave and come home, the roads we take to and from. All those little things can be distractions to someone wanting to do bad to someone, whether it's just to rob them of their money or their vehicle. If you're making it too hard on them and they're just not a professional, car thief or murderer or something where you're the target and that's not going to stop them. In general, people will be less likely to mess with you if you're making it difficult just by your pattern of life and the way you travel and the way you move. They're going to go on and try to find someone else who's oblivious to the world, looking at their phone as they type their PIN number into the ATM to get $500 out, but yet they're still in their phone and don't see the person coming up behind them. Yeah. Robs them, steals them, and it goes on. So all those things are important. They're important to teach our kids. Have 911 on plugged into your phone, where all you have to do is hit send if you're leaving work late. You've got a teenage kid who works at a local restaurant, right? And it's 10 o'clock at night, and they've closed down. They're walking. Whether it's 911 or calling their mom or their dad and having them on the phone as they walk to and from their vehicle. All these things can save a life, and it doesn't cost you a thing to do. It just means training your mind and getting yourself in this way of doing things that makes you a harder target. And we all need to do that every day. There's, crime happening around us every day, no matter if you live in, big cities or rural areas, it's around us. And so we have to do our best. Like you said, going into a restaurant or a place, knowing where the bathrooms are, knowing where all the doors to come in and out are in case something happens in there. So you give yourself options, can save your life. So
there's been a few times where I like the photo thing, because I know that me and my wife have done that, where we'll take a picture and we'll send it to each other.
Yes.
And it's just like, hey, just in case.
Yes.
But, there's been other times where, we've been in a restaurant, and I mean, you see it in movies, but I've also seen it in person. It's like, okay, it's South Texas, right? It's 104 outside, and this guy's in here in jeans and a hoodie.
Yeah.
Come on. It didn't make sense.
It doesn't. The flip side of that is, if you're going to start carrying, I'm talking anything from pepper spray to a firearm. God bless the United States. God bless Texas and our gun laws. If you're a law-abiding citizen, we have the right to carry weapons. And I'm very thankful for it, being of the background that I come from and the work that I continue to do. But I need to add on to that with that privilege, with that right, comes great responsibility. So if you're going to choose to carry pepper spray, carry a pocket knife, carry a pistol, train with that weapon. If that's going to be one of the tools of your trade, something you're going to carry every day, just like you wear a watch every day, then you need to know that weapon in and out, whether it's a pepper spray in the pouch of a certain kind, a knife, where you carry it, how it opens, to a pistol, of how to manipulate it, where you're going to carry it on your body, so that if the time ever comes that you have to use that weapon of choice of yours, using it becomes second nature. You do not have time when something happens to be trying to figure out where the lock is on that knife so you can get the blade to open up, how to take that pepper spray off of not shooting to shooting when you need it to shoot and spray properly, to more so having a pistol, a concealed gun where, oh shit, did I put a round in the chamber, or do I still need a chamber around in there? Where's that safety switch on the side? No, you're done. Yeah. You're behind the power curve, and you're going to get yourself killed even quicker by not knowing how to use the weapons that you're carrying. Get them taken away from you by a bad person who's been trained, or who's got a lot of experience taking life and doing bad things. They are going to take that weapon from you and use it on you. And what did you just accomplish? Nothing.
Yeah.
So again, having the right and privilege to carry weapons comes with great responsibility. You must train on them. You must master them and be comfortable with it, however you're going to carry it. I highly recommend, when it comes to carrying a weapon, a pistol, do it concealed. Doing it open carry, which a lot of states have open carry. Texas has open carry. I tell people, in reference to playing cards, poker, you're showing your cards.
Yeah.
If I'm a bad person who's coming in there to do bad things, and I walk into a room and I see you have a gun, you're the first person I'm going to take out. You're my first threat. You've shown me, whether you know what you're doing with it or not, I know that I'm going to have to deal with you, and I'm probably going to deal with you first because I see that you got a gun. Why show people what you have unnecessarily?
Yeah.
You don't want to have to show them that you're carrying that gun until you're drawing it out and squeezing that trigger on them. And then again, that's the easy part. It's everything that comes after having to take a life and pull the trigger, or injure someone. You could be 100% in the right in that situation.
But you still carry that weight.
And, well, there's a lot to it. Several facts. First one is, physically, you're there. You've experienced that. There's still going to be an investigation. There's a good chance you might get handcuffed and put in the back of a vehicle. Hell, you may even go to jail that night. You're not going to go home to supper. You're not going to be, telling that story to your family around the dinner table. An investigation will be done. You will have to be cleared. You may have to hire an attorney. You may have to miss some work. All these things most people don't even think about. They think up to the point of pulling that trigger. If they have what's in them, and they've probably run it through their mind 1,000 times, how they're going to react if that moment came, and that's where it ends. They don't think about the follow-on of what I just told you about, and then the mental aspect of it. If if you shoot somebody, but especially if you take a life, your life changes forever. It just does. Mm-hmm. It will never be the same again, and you will have to deal with that mentally. Again, could be 100% correct, but the images you see, the things you smelt, the taste in the air, all burns inside you, and you never will forget that. So there's a lot there that you need to consider as well. If you're not willing to deal with all that may happen by carrying a gun and pulling it out and using it, then you might want to reconsider carrying one at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people get excited about the idea of carrying a firearm, and like you said, it's not something that you want to have to use.
Gosh, no.
And you just mentioned all the things that you have to go through after the trigger's been pulled, and after, like you said, even if it's justified, there's so many things that come after that. But the benefit of that, if it's a righteous shooting and you did what you needed to, was you saved your life. And
That's
you
right.
saved your
and maybe
family's
saved
life.
someone else's.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the benefit. That's the greatness that we get to have living in this wonderful country we live in, and in this beautiful state of Texas that we live in. I just try to reiterate that it's a great privilege, it's a great honor to be able to have these rights, but it comes with great responsibility. What is
a person's, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this, but I like to tell people, hey, if you're uncomfortable, because I like, what's the I guess the end all be all, right? As far as I tell people, when you're uncomfortable, get out of there.
Right.
Leave, whatever it is, get out of there. And so I like to tell people that, to put that in their heads and make them think about that. But what does that actually, I guess, what does that actually look like, right? I'm compromised. I have a friend of mine, it turned out to be nothing, but her phone popped off about having an AirPod that wasn't hers. Right?
Sure, yeah.
And so the idea of somebody taping an AirPod to her car to keep track of where she's going.
Crossed your mind.
It crossed the mind.
Yep.
And so, like, in that case, it's like, what is somebody's last resort? Is it driving to a police substation, or in her case, it didn't really matter if she took a different route, or if it didn't matter,
right?
If she did anything different, because if somebody's actually tracking her, they got to stay with a certain distance or whatever I think it is, but
right.
They can still track that movement. So I guess with something like that, is it just better to go to a police station and tell them what you found, and hopefully it be nothing? But
sure. No, if that was me and that was the situation, most definitely need to leave that area immediately, right? Start paying, if you hadn't, enjoying the moment, the concert, whatever venue you're at. Now you need to start focusing. All right, who's moving with me? When I go to the bathroom, am I seeing the same man, the same lady behind me walking to the parking lot? Do I start trying to look at people and recognize faces, clothes, whatever, so that way when you get in your car, when you go move to another location, are you seeing that person there? Mm-hmm. Start doing that. While in your car, I would go to the nearest police station, maybe call 911. This is my name, this is who I am, this is the description of my vehicle. I was at this venue. I tell them the situation with the pod. I'm not sure if somebody's trying to track my car, or if it was just someone else there, but I'm scared, I'm nervous. So I'm driving to this police station, and I just want to have somebody on the phone with me. While you're driving there, when you're making turns on streets, see what vehicles follow you. Maybe as you're on a main highway and your exit's coming up, don't get in the far right lane. Maybe stay 2 lanes over, and right at the last minute before you're going to miss your exit, you don't even use your blinker. You just skirt over 2 lanes and take your exit and see what else drags behind you.
Yeah.
If someone else did, like, oh, those are all ding, 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 somebody's following you, you know. Somebody with tradecraft isn't going to do that. They're going to peel off, and if they're stacked, someone else is going to pick you up, right? But if it's just someone who was trying to rob you, do something bad to you, that doesn't have, you know, isn't trained, you'll catch them like that. Don't take the most direct route back home if you think somebody's following you. Take left and right turns. You know, somebody follows you on one turn, it happens all the time. You take a second turn and they follow you, all right, now you need to get a little suspect. They take a third turn with you, you know, within 5 minutes of your drive home, and you've gone out of your way, not taking the most direct route. Those are all indicators. Hey, somebody may be following me. Somebody may be trying to do something bad to me. And those are things you need to take. And that's why, again, if you notice that, now you try to get a picture, even if it's in your rearview mirror backwards. You know, these cameras, phone cameras we have are great and can be processed, and you can get plate numbers off, you know, a rearview mirror.
Yeah.
But all those are things that you need to, again, we go back to being self-aware and precautions you can take to make yourself harder targets, to up your survivability chances of something, you know, if somebody was trying to do something bad to you, that do not cost you a penny. It's time and getting in that mindset and doing it every day, not just once a week.
Or when you're scared. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think about, maybe I'm naive, but sometimes I feel like eye contact's very important. You know, if I don't go downtown very often, but
Yeah.
there's been times where I do. If I'm walking down the parking garage and I hear somebody behind me, I'm a slow walker, man. I'll stop, and I'll literally stop and turn around and make eye contact and say hello. And it makes me feel better, one, but two, I often feel like if somebody knows that I know that they're there,
Sure,
you know, maybe they'll peel off and leave me alone. Right. Or even like in a scenario where you're talking about possibly being at a concert and you've got all these people around, you know, maybe I'm naive in thinking that I'm a great judge of character, but I feel like a lot of times when you make eye contact with somebody, you can almost tell when somebody else is a little paranoid because they just got caught staring at you.
For sure.
You know, and sometimes it's just Gabe being a dirtbag checking out a hot chick.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a different stare that you get when somebody is actually trying to track you or pay too much attention to you.
There is.
You know?
No, you're spot on, and that's just one of many ways. And you know, there's no set way to do it. We all have to figure out our ways of being aware of our surroundings. And if one of yours is that stopping, making eye contact, it's a great one because you're right. People who are trying to stay in the shadows or blend in, they don't want to be pointed out or looked at directly and addressed. You know that scares them off. Like, oh shit, they know me, they see me, I gotta go. So whatever ways you can accomplish what you're wanting to, and that's, you know, making people know they're there.
Yeah.
Then by all means, whether it's, you know, eye contact or making them say hello to you, you know, or just standing there for a minute and making it a little odd that, hey, yes, I'm looking at you, you know.
Yeah.
There's no wrong way. You know, well, I shouldn't say there's no wrong. I'm sure there's things you don't want, you know, but find out what works best for you in identifying those things. And if that's one way that works for you, that's great. But yeah, body language tells a lot about somebody. You know, if they're nervous as heck, the way they're dressed, like you talked about, it's the middle of the summer, you're at a summer concert, everybody's in shorts, no shirts on, and there's one guy standing over there with long jeans, boots, and a trench coat. Yeah, I might want to keep your eye on him. You know, those are things, you know. Hands, I'm huge on hands. I'm not a big fan of big crowds. I've had too many bad things happen in big crowds in my experience in this industry I'm in. So when I can't see everyone's hands, I get nervous. To me, you know, if people who are doing bad things keep their hands in their pockets, whether it's on a clicker to, you know, click off an IED or, have their hand on their gun already because they're fixing to do something bad, or a knife, whatever. I want to be able to react to it as quickly as possible. But it takes a lifestyle of living this way, of being, being proactive, so that you're a harder target. It's not something it would not do you any good to do it, one day a week. You have to make the conscious effort every day of all these little things, changing your routes, not always leaving at the exact same times to and from the office, being aware when you're driving down the road of cars are, turning off every time you turn off. It has to be a conscious effort, and we have to teach our kids this. Our kids are just, they shouldn't have to worry about these things, but it's the world we live in, and we have to educate them as well, so that if they see something that doesn't look right, they tell somebody, and it can be investigated and looked onto, or so they don't find themselves getting snatched into a van with no windows and hauled off.
I got a niece. She's young. She's probably 13, but I think when she was 11, we had a conversation because I had this weird thing happen at the house or in the neighborhood where we've actually got a guy who can't hand out Halloween candy. Mm-hmm. And so on the podcast that I did with the trooper, we talked about it, but that made me think about, it kind of put it back in the forefront of my mind, people trying to do things to children, right?
Yes.
So I was talking to my niece, and this was a couple years back, but her dad didn't even know about it, but she says to me and my little girlfriends, we have a code word when we're uncomfortable. My buddy was like, I don't even know where she got that from. But to her and her girlfriends, if we're uncomfortable, or one of us is, we've got a little word that we say. Good. And we come together and we just get out of there. Good. And so that made me feel good. But even something that simple, to where it's like, hey, if I'm with some people and I make eye contact or give you a phrase, that means I'm really uncomfortable.
Yes.
Well, not even to, and then just to kind of touch on something, it's like, you can't even leave your drinks when you go to the bar anymore. The last thing you want to do is receive an open drink from somebody.
Right.
So that's another thing. But I guess another thing that I want to touch on with you is, what are some things, since y'all do so much initial prep before y'all make a move or take a client somewhere, what is something that are on your guys' radar locally here in the United States that maybe wasn't 10 years ago? Is there anything that you're aware of that is now turned into something that you have to be concerned with when you take a client out, and maybe that's something that the regular population needs to be concerned with? I don't know whether it's a threat of bombing like we saw in Boston, or I've seen the podcast where I hear some wild things about new technology that they're using that can hurt a lot of people.
Yes.
And so is there something that maybe you're aware of that maybe didn't exist 10 years ago that, John Q. Public out in the street doesn't even think twice about, but actually is in the country now, and we just need to be careful with because it's here and we're just not aware of it?
It's hard to narrow down just any one, because every week there's a new tactic, right? A new way of things, and more of them, it seems like, in the past decade than in the past, 30 years of bad people coming up with new ways with all this technology, like you said, that it's just out there, even in the civilian sector, that in years prior, if you weren't in the military or working for the government in special sections, you didn't have access to that kind of equipment. But one thing that we put a lot more thought into our advanced work and our assessments is, will we be able to we want to drop the client off closest to the building we're going to be entering. We don't want a whole lot of walkway if it's unnecessary. We'd rather have it in a parking garage or in an underground tunnel than out in the open. Why? Snipers. 2, the longer you have to walk from a parking spot into the building, These days, there's the pattern of people causing mass chaos by running over people with vehicles. That's a reason that you really want to be close to a building and not have to expose them to any more open space where things like that can happen. Yeah. So that's one. It's small, but it is one that has to be considered.
Now that you say that, I mean, even now that you're talking, I'm thinking about it. I saw a video of the guy that drove through Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
And one of them, he misses this lady by inches.
Right.
And it makes you think, even just where you're walking, I guess, on a sidewalk.
Yes.
Walking closer to the building than you are to the street.
Yes.
Maybe. Just little things. This lady was probably 6 inches from being killed. Yeah. And it just was just luck that he didn't drive up on the curb. And she got on there as soon as he went by.
Another thing that has to be taken into consideration, I feel, because of the gun rules and regulations and the abilities to carry concealed the way we do, that wasn't really out there, 20, 30 years ago, is being aware of your surroundings in general, like we talk about. And when, for lack of a better word, shit hits the fan and guns have been drawn and there's shots being fired, being disciplined enough, slowing the process down because it's chaotic and adrenaline's pumping, and knowing and identifying the bad guys versus the good guys, because so many people carry concealed now. So when guns come out and everyone's in regular civilian street clothes, you got to know who the bad person is and who the good people are, so you don't kill somebody that was a good person, because that's another thing you'll have to live with, and that's murder. So you better know.
Yeah, that's something that
normal people don't think about.
No, but you experience that. Like, when you were in the Middle East, that's a great thing to consider, because it's like when you're in the Middle East and it's an extreme situation because it's somewhat chaotic, know.
And I can give you examples on both sides. On the government side, we're over there in these more current wars that we fought in. They weren't wearing uniforms. Mm-hmm. They were just like the civilian folks, So you better know who your target is and who's the innocent civilian.
How do you do
and
that?
It was very hard. Again, it goes back to me sharing with you earlier in the business of doing executive and personal and diplomatic protection. Unlike being on the offense and being part of a military team or a government team who's out there chasing down high-value targets where you get to jump on them, you get to fire on them first if the situation presents itself. Doing protection work, you never get the first shot fired off. You always have to react to the situation that presents itself, whether it's a IED that sets off a small arms attack by people, or a vehicle-borne IED that's blown up, or mortars that get lobbed into your location, and then the bad guys start rushing you with weapons. You have to turn the situation around, and you have to be able to have the discipline and the experience and know who the bad guy is from the good guy. There's many times where we were traveling down streets, everything's quiet and looks normal. There's a guy working on a car on the side of the road over here. There's another guy skinning a goat over here. There's another guy sitting around a tire burning because they filled it with fuel to do some cooking later, which, yes, they use rubber tires filled with fuel and cook on it. But anyhow, and then the next second, they all have guns and they're pointing at you. The guy that was working on the car, he pulls out a gun from the motor, chassis part. And the guy cleaning the goat pulls a gun out from the cavity of that goat, and now they're your enemy. So it is very hard, and it takes a lot to keep your mind focused on everything going around, not to get tunnel vision, right, where you're only seeing here and you lose focus of everything else around you. Secondary attacks, more men coming from a different direction who may try to harm you. That's the government example I can give you. On the civilian side, I've been in a country in South America.
You're almost constantly reassessing your
Always.
surroundings.
Always.
Because you almost have to look at it with fresh eyes continuously.
Yes. On the civilian side, I've been in South America with a client, and we were in a location on a busy street, packed with people, shoulder to shoulder on a street, and on one side of the street, a guy's getting robbed of his phone, and he's not wanting to give it up. So the bad guy pulls out a pistol, shoots him a couple times in the stomach. He lets go of the phone, right, and falls back. I'm watching this unfold, keeping my awareness of my client who's right in front of me, who I'm fixing to, have to small package and get him out of there through this crowd. On the other side of the street is a group of about 6 police officers who hear the gunshots as well. And what do they start doing? They start shooting across. So we're not the intended target, but we're caught in the crossfire. What do? I'm there to protect my client. I make him as small as I can. I cover him with my body, and I move him through the crowd. I had armed guys, because again, I was in another country. I was not carrying, but I had locals who were, vetted, trained, wore what I needed in civilian clothes, and they were smart enough to know that if they would have pulled their guns out, would not have benefited at all, because those police officers had no idea that they were police officers as well in plain clothes doing side work for me, right? And would have took a greater chance of getting, what we call, blue on blue, friendly fire of each other. So they just helped create the path that I needed to get the client out to the vehicle that we had running parallel a street away, in case something came up that I could shove them in and we could get off and out of the hot area. So those are 2 examples of how it can happen, and you have to be able to. You just can't start shooting. No.
Well, even in that case, you don't even want to draw your weapon.
And sometimes it's best not to shoot. And that was one of the examples of it was best not to shoot. It was just best to create distance, get behind cover, get out of the area, because pulling out more guns was not going to make, there was no positive benefit with all the chaos that were going. People were starting to get trampled on. Fireworks were going off at the same time. So you had to really know the difference between a firework popping and the snap of a round going off.
Yeah.
And so
there's so much to it, Mike.
There is.
It's funny because I've even told people and my wife, I'm like, worst case scenario, the gun is for us to get the hell out of there.
Yes.
But in that situation where, and I've often wondered, it's got to be so difficult, like you said, to be able to say, everybody's here in plain clothes, who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. And it's almost, if you're not in immediate danger, just get out.
Yes.
Get out of there. Because in that situation, even just drawing your weapon, they could have potentially been shot.
Yes.
Because
for sure,
the police don't know.
They do not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Man, it's heavy. There's so much to think about, and even for me, like, again, talking about things that we don't know, it's like, I often try and think about as many scenarios as I can. And I had never considered something like that happen and not drawing your weapon, which is probably in
talk
some
about
cases,
taking discipline.
Yeah.
When you know what you have and you know what you're capable,
you're
but but to be smart enough in that environment to know, you're not just thinking about this step, you're taking 3 steps. All right, if I pull my weapon out, I know what I'm capable of. I know I can, hit what I need to hit, but what else is going to come with it in this environment? And know that, okay, there's going to be more carnage, more damage done if I pull this gun out. We need to do, what other resources do we have? All right, distance, vehicles, buildings we can get into to get away and get to a safer place. It's going to be more productive than pulling out my weapon here and getting in a shootout with these cops who don't know we're good guys too, and possibly losing my life or losing my client's life. Then what?
Yeah.
All of it was for nothing.
And what's interesting is I think the vast majority of people, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, don't go through that entire process because.
Oh yeah, that entire process happened in
2 seconds.
Yes, so
you know,
remember that too.
Which is crazy, right? Because you sit there and go, okay, well, we probably talked about that for 5 minutes, but while you're doing it, it's literally
in less
2
than a
seconds.
second. Yeah. Decisions have to be made, and they have to be made right away.
And so, on top of everything else, that's something else people need to consider learning to be comfortable with.
Yes,
you know? It's a matter of knowing where your safety and your trigger guard
without
and
looking at it
is. The other part of that are doing these assessments instantly.
Yes,
you know, and I mean, how do you train for that outside of
experience?
Yeah,
you can't learn that in a book. You can read about it. You can be given examples of other people's experience, which will help you learn, but you don't really master it until you become part of that situation.
Yeah.
And with every one that happens, you get smarter. You learn. I tell you, we didn't talk about it on this episode, maybe on another one, but part of my life
we're doing more than one, Mike.
is working in a penitentiary after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I learned a lot there that I still use to this day in the world that I live in. Of examples are, nothing is what it seems when you walk into a day room or a cell block in a penitentiary. You cannot talk to two individuals in the same manner and expect to get the same response in the penitentiary. And you have to learn this in the first 2 to 5 seconds that you made contact with that inmate, with that convict, of, okay, this is how I'm gonna have to address him. I got to be aggressive with him, or I got to be, real slow or real patient or more respectful with this one. And I'll get everything I need. He'll do all the work that I need him to do to get everybody to get back in their cells by giving this man a little respect, because he runs that cell block. And so he commands a little more respect than the next guy. It's a give and take, and you better learn it, and you better learn it quick. Walking into a cell block, you got guys over here doing push-ups and sit-ups, guys over there playing cards, a couple guys over here watching the TV, and you blink, and the next thing you know, that bench they were sitting on is now 5 shanks and 2 bats, and the guys that were doing push-ups over here, they done shit out a shank from their butthole or something, because now everybody's armed up and there's a riot going on. You're like, what? Man, we're just watching a show right here, 5 seconds ago.
When I think I told you I was working at the jail for a little while, and one thing that I learned, that I feel that I learned there, that I kind of carried with myself ever since, is that atmosphere. I learned that I can heavily influence somebody else's behavior by my behavior.
Yes. And
like you said, whether it's giving respect, whether it's being a little aggressive, whether it's being a little compassionate, whether it's being, maybe listening to somebody you don't really care to listen to.
Yes.
Especially in that type of atmosphere, you instantly either build rapport or you lost rapport instantly.
Yes.
But it lasts for a long time.
And there's no second chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So either last for a long time, or you're going to spend a long time trying to get back what you lost in that opportunity. That was one thing that I think I really appreciate that I learned there. Because again, we talked about ego earlier, and I always feel like a know-it-all, but then every so often I learn something new and that I hadn't even thought about. For sure. But one thing I want to talk to you about also is you talked about secondary attacks. And we see so many times, and I talk to my nephews and family members, and you constantly see something happening, and we're in this weird society where a lot of times when something terrible is happening, nobody's doing anything. They're recording it. That's right. And so a lot of times, we talk about, being active in something like that and taking part of trying to be part of the solution or making things better. But in a situation where you've got a bomb goes off, and people want to help, and they run to that area to try and render aid or stop people from bleeding. Yeah. And then a secondary attack happens. Are we just fucked, or is there some way to handle that? In your experience, I'm sure you've seen secondary attacks. Yes, I have.
What is the approach that somebody can take who doesn't necessarily have that exposure like you do, but they can learn, hey, this is what I need to do before I render aid. Now, granted, people might bleed out,
Right.
but they're going to bleed out and then you're getting shot.
Right.
So, I mean, what is something that people need to consider or even just look for? Possibly?
So that's another great question, and there's no one right answer. Situations are going to dictate, environment's going to dictate, use of assets and first responders are going to dictate. But what I will say that will help is, yes, when an attack happens in the civilian world, in the corporate world out here, for one, instead of getting on your phone right away to record, make yourself more aware of the situation. Try to identify exactly where things were going on. Create some distance between you and that area that was going on. You know, get behind cover and concealment. Concealment is somewhere you can blend in, like camouflage, and you're not seen very much, or get in the shadow. If it's at nighttime, get in a shadow where you can't see much, but you can still be shot at. You're just concealed. You're not covered. Cover is getting behind something that physically can stop a bullet, or whether it be a tree or a car, something that can provide you protection. That's cover, right? So the first thing you want to do is get behind cover. Find cover, create distance. Even if your intention is to want to help those folks, give it a minute. Control your breathing. Your mind is going to have wanted to get that tunnel vision. Let it open back up. Look around. See what else is going on. See who's running away. Because if that's happening, a lot of people are going to be running away, right? See who's running towards where the bad stuff just happened. Are they empty-handed? Are they carrying guns? Is this the same? You need to assess all these things, and you have to assess them very, very quickly, and then make your decision if you're going to make your way towards there. And if you are, don't run the most direct, open line of sight to that bound behind cars, behind trees on your way there, in case a secondary attack does happen to happen from the same area. If it happens in a different area, well, all that was for nothing, and you got got a hit from there's no perfect way, but be cautious of making your way back to them, and then start assessing and look for the ones who with the biggest gunshot wounds, with the no legs or no arms. Those are the ones you want. You got to start prioritizing, who we can help, who we can save, who's ambulatory, who can still get up on their own accord, and create distance and get to a safer distance, and which ones need a tourniquet put on them. If not, they're going to bleed out in the next minute or so. All that has to happen, and happen quickly. Most civilians, they don't have that. They're not wired that way. They just want to they want to get away, and they should get away. What they should not do is stand around and just start recording. There's enough high-tech cameras, no matter where we go, even in rural Texas, that at this point, something, it'll get caught. I know you have good intentions and you think you're going to get some kind of, video that may help solve it. But, first protect yourself, and then try to protect and save others. You can't do it, protect and help save others, if you don't protect and save yourself first. So again, there's no right answer. Those are just some recommendations, some thought processes that people should consider if they ever find themselves in that situation.
Let me ask you this. I'm not great at it, but I'm super paranoid, Mike. And I'm not the best at this, but a lot of times when I leave the house, I dress for comfort.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I leave the house, and I used to always wear 2 shirts all the time.
Sure.
Every now and then I still do. Or I'll wear a belt, or I'll bring bandanas, or, in my mind, if something immediately happens, and maybe it's me being naive, but I think the immediate thing that needs to be stopped is bleeding.
Yes.
Right? If somebody's got a broken leg, they can wait. If somebody's got trauma to the head and they're knocked out, they can wait. But I guess this is stopping of blood. So a lot of times, and not to sound crazy, but a lot of times I'll dress in a manner where if I got to take a shirt off and tear a strip off with my knife, I can use that as a tourniquet. Or I've got a bandana, maybe I can use it to pack something.
Great.
Is if you were going to leave the house, do you typically kind of take that in consideration, or is that something where maybe I'm just being a little paranoid?
No.
Because
And I'm not.
I don't want to take like
I'm not the right person to ask because I'm not wired like your normal person. Yes, I've got tourniquets on me sometimes. I always have them in my vehicle. I have a blowout bag that.
What is a blowout bag?
A blowout bag is things that if something was to arise, if there was to be an active shooter while I'm at Walmart, I got things in that bag that are going to help stop that bad person. Gotcha. And then I've got things in that bag that are going to help me aid anybody that's been shot or injured, at least long enough to get them to a higher level of care. I'm not going to provide surgery for them there, right? But, tourniquets, blood stops, things of that nature that will help buy them a little time. Most people don't do that. So for you to think the way you do is amazing as someone who, just living your life day to day, who hasn't taken it to that step of actually carrying, tourniquets on them. But knowing, all right, I can't 2 shirts. I can, do this with one, or I carry a bandana and I can use it as a tourniquet or, to stuff a hole. That's amazing. And yes, I wish more people were of that mindset. Unfortunately, they're not. But yes, do I personally? Always. I'm always ready for the unexpected, but I'm not wired like your normal person. Yeah. So I'm going to give you that extreme side. But in general, if people would just do just that, like you said, carry a bandana on them, carry, tourniquets are cheap these days. You can buy a tourniquet for a few bucks, but know how to use it as well. Don't have one and not know how to use it and practice it. Because it can cause just as much damage if not used properly. But those are all great things to think of and be self-aware. Yeah.
I bought a first aid kit the other day.
Great.
And I hadn't typically kept one in the truck, and now I just kind of need to add to it or just buy a bigger one or something. But I always dress accordingly, right? But then when I decided to get this first aid kit, I was driving to George West, and there was 3 cars in the brush, and it just happened.
Yeah.
People were showing up. Cops hadn't showed up. So I ended up calling it in, and I'm sure other people had already.
Sure.
But it made me think, I'm always thinking about somebody physically trying to do harm. Yeah. I hadn't really put much thought into an accident.
Yes.
And so I sat there and I thought, man, I don't have, outside of what I have with me or in the truck or on me.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from just growing up in a small town, right?
Yes.
You sit there and go, hey, we're going to go fishing, and I can't think of everything I'm going to need, but I got pretty much everything, and we can use stuff differently.
Right.
But it made me reconsider just keeping a first aid kit in the car for a car accident or something similar like that.
Yes.
And again, the immediate thing is probably the blood.
Yes.
One thing that I feel like I do a fairly decent job at, because I usually call if I see I'm always driving south, right? So every time you see something, my wife gets a little frantic. She does okay, but she gets a little frantic. But I try and tell people, you got to calm down. And we go back to paying attention to your surroundings.
Yes.
Immediately you call 911. Hey, I'm southbound on 37 and just north of mile marker 81, there's a car accident.
Right.
And it's like, you got to be able to just give that information to the
Very
dispatcher.
much so.
And you got to be accurate, right?
Yes.
Or I'm southbound on 37, and this is on the southbound lane north of this mile marker. Mm-hmm. And they're gonna record it, they're gonna type it, and all that stuff goes out. But maybe I'm just getting old, right? When I was younger, I didn't care.
Yeah, we didn't think about these things.
Now it's almost in the forefront of my mind all the friggin' time.
Yeah.
And you say how you don't think like your normal Joe Blow, and I think that's kind of where everybody needs to start heading, because the potential of things are always there, and you're never talking to you. There's things we can do. I really like the way you stated of reassessing our surroundings constantly.
Yes.
I mean, that's huge. Some of the other things that you talked about doing, but I think it's something that people need to start putting in the forefront of their mind, and they don't got to be paranoid like me.
No,
but it's just something to consider.
But be self-aware.
Yeah.
And make a greater effort than we typically do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mike, man, I appreciate you coming out. I've had a great time, and we probably talked twice as long as what we recorded. So
That's okay.
but man, I really enjoy it. You've got a lot of information that you can share to people, and just your experiences and things that you've been in and you've been through, and even just things we talked about earlier, how you working through issues that you've experienced. We'll definitely get together again, man. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I like talking to South Texas boys. So
hell yeah. No, I appreciate you inviting, and by all means, let me know when you want to have another chat, and I'll do everything I can to make it happen on my end. And I appreciate you having me on here, and I truly enjoy sharing some of the experiences that I've been through in life, in the business that I'm in, and personally, and if they can help save a life, make people a little more aware of their surroundings, make them harder targets, then I'll gladly come on here and do it as often as you'd like. It's doesn't take money to do a lot of these things. It just takes thinking a little bit outside the box and create
knowledge goes a long way.
Yeah, and setting better patterns for ourselves and for our loved ones and our coworkers. You don't have to be in this business I'm in to establish some of these things in your day-to-day life. They're very beneficial to your normal, everyday, average person if you'll just use them. So, again, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it, man.
Look forward to the next one.
Hey, let me ask you one more thing before I let you go.
For sure.
Because I had it in my mind and it just came back. If you have somebody, whether they're new to shooting or new to guns or new to training, or you have somebody with some experience, what is either a location or a class or something that you're aware of that somebody who wants to be more proficient with their weapon and be a little more informed in tactics and things that they should do, what would you recommend to Joe Blow if he wanted to do something like that? Either a place or a class that you're aware of.
Oh, for sure. Great question. And yes, again, we've talked about, carrying guns, carrying weapons, and I can't stress enough the part of the responsibility that comes with it, learning your weapon, whatever type of weapon is, mastering that weapon. And it takes time and effort. And like many other things, it's a perishable skill. You don't just do it one time, go to the range, you buy a new pistol, you shoot it a couple of times, you happen to get a couple of them in the bullseye and think, I've mastered it. I know this weapon well. I can use it. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to constantly train and learn and master that weapon so that the day that you need to use it for real business, you're not, again, trying to remind yourself where the safety is, where on my body I have it located. Is it comfortable there? You need to work on those things consistently to be able to have a better outcome should that day ever come that you need to use that weapon in a real world situation. So I recommend to avid shooters, just to, you don't have to go to a range necessarily. If you've got experience, find a friend with some land, find a little dried out pond or something where you're shooting into dirt. And, of course, always use your safety rules and be aware of where you're shooting. And just get that trigger time in. Get it over. Repetition, how you carry it. Learn to draw and put it back in your waistband without ever taking your eyes off the physical target. Getting comfortable and familiar with your weapon. For beginners, I do recommend you go seek professional guidance. If you're local around the Lavernia, South San Antonio area, shout out to Josh at Lone Star Handguns. He's got a great place out there and has everything from regular shooting bays where you can go, to full-time instructors out there who can guide you and help you get accurate and learn the weapon of choice that you take out there, to private bays where if you need a little more hands-on transition stuff where you're away from the other folks who, maybe aren't as skilled as you can rent private bays and do that there. They put on, as far as I know, concealment course classes. I think they teach different levels of carbine and pistol courses. And so I highly recommend, if you're new to wanting to carry a weapon, you find someone like Josh out at Lone Star Handgun, or wherever you live, who can give you and teach you these skills, and that have the experience to do it. And then once you get comfortable, then maybe break out on your own and kind of learn your own way of doing things, but at least establish a good base with someone who has the experience and can teach you the right way to handle a weapon and how to store it as well. It's just as important.
Yeah.
But yeah.
True. And back in a while back, and they still may do it. I know they had like a ladies course too.
Yes.
It can be intimidating for ladies to.
It can. And I tell you, I'll give you one little secret here. And lots of my friends will tell you the same thing. If your wife's wanting to shoot, or even sometimes your kids, a lot of times being the father, being the husband, it's that much more added pressure on them when you try to take them out and teach them. A lot of times it's better to go, if you've got a good friend or know someone like Josh, send them to them. Sometimes they can take in those instructions a little easier.
Well, hell, I'm the last one my wife listens
not so much pressure as if it's coming from dad or the husband, of them not wanting to fail us, not to get embarrassed in front of us. Send them to a professional and let them kind of get to working it out. And then once they're comfortable, then you bring it back together, and maybe y'all can do it as a family fun shoot day, right? But the initial part of it, save yourself some headache and send them to someone else.
You know what? One thing we didn't touch on too much, but one thing that I think I would advise people is, if you're going to have a plan going out in public, you should have a plan at home too.
Oh, for sure.
And one thing that me and my wife, we need to probably go through it again. But we've communicated to each other, hey, if something happens and somebody's in the house and it's in the middle of the night and we know somebody's in the house, you grab your phone and go to the closet and call 911.
Yes.
And I'm going to grab the gun, and I'm either going to stay by the closet, and whatever comes down the hallway, we engage, but you got to have a plan.
Yes.
Because those things happen in the middle of your sleep,
very much
your
so.
heart, you wake up, your heart rate's through the roof.
Yes.
You gotta already, like going out in public, have a plan at home. Where you have children too, you don't want to be shooting across your house with your kids in the bedroom on the other side, because sheetrock isn't,
know your weapons,
know
your house plan. Yes, so you're not, shooting slugs through 3 rooms of the house and hitting, someone you're not intentionally trying to hit. So that's a great point, and I agree 100%.
Cool. Mike, man, I appreciate you again, man.
For sure. Enjoyed it.
All right, we'll do it again, and man, I'm glad to get to know you.
Same here, man.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.